So anyway, that's the reality of life, right? And you feel free to be real humans too. So I'm going to get started. If anyone has any questions though, before I do, please let me know. I don't see any. And I think I have it set up so people can just drop in as we go. So we may have more folks who come and go. If you need to leave, you can also feel free to leave. If you want to get the YouTube link from me, if you can't find it, it's my channel. If you just search Becky Mollenkamp, you'll find the YouTube to be able to watch the live stream later. But if you can't find it for some reason, reach out to me. You should have my email. I'll happily send it to you. Also, if there was for some reason you might want these slides, let me know and I'm happy to send them along to you. So we are going to talk about the white women problem today because it's such a critical issue that I think is really something that we need to focus on this year, because even a really small shift in the way we as white women vote would make it for certain the Democrats would win this year. Because when you look at these numbers, and going back to 92, but actually it goes back much farther than that white women have voted Republican. I think it was all but 2 elections in the last, since 1950 something, white women have chosen the Republican candidate and not the Democratic candidate by a majority. And that's all of them back to 92, obviously, because the best anyone did was Clinton and Gore back in 96 and 2000. Meanwhile, our friends, our Black friends, our Latinx friends, and sadly, the data for Asian women specifically was very hard to find. There's information about Asian people as a whole, but not broken out by men and women that I could find. But still, we can look at the numbers of the last 2 elections and all the others and see that who's pulling the weight here, right? And who is not. We are the problem. We're the ones that need to fix this rather than expecting other people to save us. That narrative around Black women will save us. Let's, have the Black women take care of things. Like, that's not okay. And we have to stop participating in that narrative and start owning that we are the ones that need to make the change here. White women specifically represent 39% of the electorate. That is the largest voting bloc. It's more than white men. It's more than any other group of people. We are also the most divided. All of the splits happen along all of these different identity lines. Every other demographic, white men, Black women, Asian men, all these other demographics vote much more uniformly. They all sort of vote the same way. We are the group that tends to be the most divided. We are the least alike in how we vote, which, again, if we could fix that, that would be the thing that could change things. This is a long quote, but I think it's really important to talk about the why. Why are white women, voting against our own interests? We know that Republicans, as we have seen, are not supportive of so many of the issues that matter to us around childcare, around obviously reproductive rights issues, so many other issues that are really important to women. Republicans are not aligned with how most white women actually feel about many of those issues. And yet, the majority of white women continue to vote against those interests. Why? And it goes back to patriarchy, and it goes back to proximity to power. And so white women, we have 2 identities, right? 2 primary identities, woman and white. But when we look at the sort of hierarchy, I use that in quotes, of identities, we know that whiteness is at the top, right? And then we can look at patriarchy and look at men. But whiteness in the world in which we live is that dominant above all other identities. And so women, when faced with these 2 identities, very often choose the one that's at the top because it is their way of also them protecting themselves. And I thought this was a really great quote to help get at that. And again, if anybody ends up wanting these slides, you can have them to share with other white women that you know or other folks that might be of interest of these things. But so we vote against our own interests as actually a way to try to preserve power for ourselves. And that's the thing we have to start to challenge within ourselves, and then hopefully also with other white women. There we go. Oh, did I go too far? Yes, I did. I wanted to also share this quote from Rachel Cargle, who I think is amazing. Just it kind of gets to the same thing, a little bit simpler, that white women are choosing their whiteness over their womanhood and choosing to vote for people who help maintain white supremacy as opposed to what will help maintain the safety of women overall. And this is the stuff that we as white women really have to reflect on and get really honest with ourselves. And in what ways are we still, even those of us who feel are, consider ourselves super progressive and liberal, what ways are we still participating in that? What ways are we still allowing our whiteness to take the priority over that other of our identity that we share with all women? Okay, so this problem is old. This is not a new problem. It keeps coming up every election. Everyone holds their breath, and then the results come in, and we say, well, damn it, white women did it again. Once again, they have voted Republican, and sometimes that has cost us dearly. And it may feel like what is going on now, but the truth is it's always been going on. It's always been going on for as long as America has existed and prior to that. But we'll talk about the American experience, because when it comes down to a choice between patriarchy and sisterhood, white women choose patriarchy. In the civil rights movement, so going back not that far into the 60s and 70s, that second wave of feminism, this thing was happening then. The white women were not doing the work that needed to be done to incorporate the needs of women of color into their movement. I'm going to share at the end the Combahee collective statement that you can read, where it was such an issue that Black women, most especially Black lesbians, broke off and said, from feminists, said, this doesn't represent us. You're not taking care of us. You're prioritizing your needs yet again. Listen to us. And so it's a really important thing to read. So I will share the link to that. Going back another generation to the suffragettes, when they gathered in Seneca Falls to try and fight for the right for women to vote, it was about white women voting. There were many people, including the most well-known, and people we still, folks who maybe haven't done as much work, still really respect and will quote, like Susan B. Anthony, who fought actively against Black women being included in that right for getting the vote. It's some of the stuff that we sometimes hear again now, I think, where it becomes about, well, we gotta, like, the only way we can get this thing is if we compromise. And so that compromise now has to look like you wait your turn, but we promise we'll get back to you, right? And that stuff still continues in how we show up. And that's why it's important for us to understand the history and the full context and narrative as we think about issues that are coming up now. And going back even farther, even when women, back before women could vote, before they could hold office, when the land that they owned was actually owned by their husbands, even in all of that, white women still, one way that they could have parity with white men was that they could buy and sell and own enslaved people. And 40% or more of slave owners were white women, which is not something we think about, talk about, own, reflect on, understand nearly enough. We sort of think of this as always been a patriarchy problem and a men problem. And women were also, we like to often as white women try to own our oppression in all of this. And yes, there is that, but running right alongside of that, no, couldn't vote, couldn't hold office, couldn't own land. And many, many, many white women also chose to be owners of enslaved folks. That's a problem. Oops, sorry about the doggy. See, it's real life here. So I want to just talk about some of the pillars of white supremacy culture, because I think they're kind of an issue that are coming up now. If any of you follow me on Threads, you may be aware of some of what I'm talking about here, because it's been an issue for me on there. Our urgency as white women is not a universal sense of urgency, baby. I need you to let me have space, okay? I love you. Because urgency is a pillar of white supremacy. And for so many white women, there is this feeling in this election, 2016, it was there too, even more so now, there is this sense of urgency of, we have to stop this now because we will be pulled back, right? Even with Kamala's, what is it? We won't go back, that slogan they're using, which is a great slogan. And I think it's important to remember that, yes, Project 2025 and Trump and fascist leadership, those are real and dire threats. And the way that it's framed by many white people is this future vision of this dystopia that is this awful thing. And what we need to remember and have the bigger context around as white women is that Black women have already lived and are in many ways still living without many of the freedoms that we now are just now in 2024 worrying about being threatened, right? So there are many people of, there's no group is a monolith, as we can see with white women especially, but no group is a monolith. And there are many folks who are people of color or, have multiple overlapping identities who feel that same level of threat. But there are also for many Black women and Black folks who feel this bit of, oh, it's an issue now that it's an issue for you, right? Oh, suddenly you're worried about your rights. And now we're all supposed to feel your same level of urgency about the situation. And when we talk about it in that kind of framing, that is not a framing that is respectful of, honoring of, understanding of this larger context. And once again, is a way that we are sort of separating ourselves as white women and taking that whiteness piece of our identity and prioritizing it. So it's something for us to watch for and think about when we're talking about these issues. I love this quote from Bree Newsom, who says, "We're becoming a handmaid's tale," which is something we have heard so much about since the Dobbs decision, is a really white-centered take that ignores that we're living in a struggle against genocide and slavery that's been going on for 500 years. So for white women, it's suddenly feeling like, ooh, this is scary. This is not great. This could be really bad. And yet we forget how many of our Black sisters and other, anyone of color who's sitting there going, yeah, for you, it looks real scary for you. This has been real scary for us for forever since this country was started. And so it's really important for us to think about. And I just want to even frame it in terms of like Project 2025. Again, yes, a very real threat, deeply problematic, something we need to stop. And we need to even think of it inside of this bigger lens if we want to be able to have these conversations in a way that is not just about prioritizing us as white women and our fears. So there are several things here that the Project 2025 will do. I just pulled out a few of these areas to highlight. will share, if you haven't already read it, I will share the link to both the 920-page full report, if you have that kind of time, or the 48, I think it is, page sort of synopsis from Democracy Now!, I believe it is, so that you can read and get informed on it. But there's these, I'll just let you look at them: justice, LGBTQ, labor, health, education, and these key areas. Some of these things that are really, really scary that could be coming. And it is absolutely true that they are really, really scary. And I think it's important to remember that the current reality for Black women in each of these areas is already really, really scary and really, really bad, and far worse than anything that we as white women experience or understand. So when we talk about these changes that are coming and say, do you understand how bad it could be? I don't think you understand how far they're taking us back. I don't think you understand what's happening. When we do that, especially in spaces with people of color, we are not honoring the fact that their experience is so different than ours. And so this is not to say that that you can't support Harris. We're here to do that. It's not to say that you can't say that Harris is a far better option, or that we need to get rid of Trump, or that Project 2025 is awful. Of course. And we have to have it inside of this broader context of the fact that it is not just our lived experience that is changing in this big way. Other people, their experience has been very different all along. And we need to be able to be really honoring of that. So just think it's important for us to always think about these context issues when we're talking about this stuff. So this is why I say we need to learn how to, as white women, stretch beyond the binary, because either or thinking is yet another one of these pillars of white supremacy culture. It is absolutely possible for us to both want Trump to lose and to not think that Harris is necessarily the best alternative, right? That she's not maybe fully representative of all of our values or of all the values of our Black friends, family, siblings, all of that. It's also possible for both to vote for Harris, which I'm going to do, and to question her stances. Specifically for me, multiple genocides happening across the world. There are many other stances that some people may have an issue with. And it is okay for both of those things to be true. It's also possible to both fundraise, fund. Let's call it a fundraise, fundraise for a Democrat and not be a Democrat. I'm not a Democrat. It's okay if you are. I'm not. But I am going to fundraise for the Democrat because I think it's important. But also, I'm doing that with the full context of all of these other issues and knowing that she's better. She's going to help stop Project 2025. And there are many things that could also improve. And it's okay for both of those things to be true. Kimberly Crenshaw, if you don't know, is the person who coined the phrase or the term intersectionality or intersectional feminism, the idea of feminism that is everything we're talking about here, a vision of rights for women that talks about rights for all women and also all people, meaning that our non-binary friends, right? Our trans male friends, everyone who is, we look at all pieces of a person's identity and how those various intersecting pieces of our identity affect our proximity to power or how far we are from that, our proximity to that power or our oppression. And so it's important that when you talk about these things, you're looking at it through that kind of a lens. The things I want to suggest beyond just supporting Harris, I think this is important. We're going to do I'm going to ask you to donate. But the things that beyond that I want to make sure we're all thinking about as white women specifically during this time is educating ourselves. If anything I've shared is new to you, and more than likely it may not be because you're probably here because you have heard my voice and feel aligned with that. So a lot of this may not be too new to you, which is okay. But if any of it is, or even if there's things that, there's things I still don't know. So we all need to be learning. We need to not be asking Black folks to do that, and certainly not to do that for free. We need to Google, it's our friend. We can do that on our own. We can also read lots of books and listen to podcasts. There's a lot of resources out there. And as we learn, we need to investigate ourselves to say, how might my privilege be disadvantaging others? How might I be causing harm? And then how can I learn? And the next one, evolve, right? We also need to take that knowledge and then actually put it into action in growth, right? So we want to avoid white supremacy tactics. Some of the ones I've discussed. Another one that I want to call out is defensiveness, because we as white women, that is probably one of the issues that gets us in the most trouble, right? The whole Karen sort of thing where we, in the face of being called in or out on those microaggressions or macroaggressions, the ways that we mess up, when we get defensive, that is not helping. When we use our tears as a weapon, that is not helping, right? We need to learn how to recognize when we have made a mistake, when we've caused harm, and make amends, and then learn and do better. And we need to do all of that, not because of guilt, white guilt, and not because we want to receive praise or because we want to be superior to others, but because it's the right thing to do. And so those are really important things to remember in that process of evolution. Also, as you learn more, then you can speak more. When you see injustice, especially when that injustice is happening to someone where you hold the privileged or oppressor identity, to speak out against it. And as we've been talking about, the thing that I want to make sure we talk about the most is also to always have this broader context beyond our own lived experiences as white women that we use when talking about, framing, thinking about any issue. And I mean any issue, because every issue, whether it is like what you're watching on TV or making for dinner or who you're voting for, all of them are political, and all of it exists inside of this larger context that we need to consider. And then the last thing is amplifying the voices of Black women. Listen to Oh, Boise, I see myself here where I've made some typos. I rushed through this, but listening to Black women, what they are saying. Oh, no, that one was okay. Listen to what Black women are saying about an issue, and then default to or share their voice before using your own. Let their words speak for themselves. Don't speak over, correct, question, diminish, interpret their words. That's something that all of us can do, whether that is in a social media space or in your workspace. And as white women, that's something, especially if you are a boss or you work in a workspace, to think about the ways that you are speaking up or amplifying the voices of people of color. Let's see, I muted her, I think. Okay. I wanted to share a few books. some resources for people. This is a very small sampling of some of the books that I've read and suggest. There are so many amazing books. If any of them you haven't read, again, I'm happy to share the slideshow with you. They're all actually clickable. All of the sources and things I mentioned here are, so I'm happy to share that. But these are some that are really valuable. They Were Her Property is, again, going back to that, the stats around how many white women owned enslaved people. Really, really great read to help understand that really deep context around white women's role in and that relationship between white women and Black women. I'm going to skip down one to Mothers of Massive Resistance, because that goes into sort of that, it goes back farther, but talking about the civil rights movement and the ways that white women played such a role in slowing down progress there, specifically and especially around schools. And we see it continuing to happen very much, right? Around the ways, what we're going to allow to be taught in school, who gets to play on sports teams in schools, all of these things, and the way that white women try to police the schools as a method of continuing white supremacy in a way that allows them to feel superior and not like they're white supremacists. White Feminism is one of the best books I've read around understanding what white feminism looks like and calling yourself lovingly in on your own feminism. And is it actually intersectional and for everyone, or is it not? The Trouble with White Women, it's actually written by a white woman, and I tried to make sure I had some books that were both, because I think it's really important for us to listen to Black women, and there are many white women writing about white women specific issues in a way that I think that feels more invitational to white women when they're earlier in this journey and learning, because they know how to speak to white women because they are. So that one's a really great book too, about feminism and the ways it's excluded people of color. Feminism for Everybody was my entry point for Bell Hooks. I could recommend every one of her books, but I just thought I would start there since it's specifically around the idea of feminism for everyone. And Sister Outsider, if you haven't read Audre Lorde, read Audre Lorde. Just period, it needs to happen. We all need to read Audre Lorde. And then I also just wanted to share a few of the people that I'm following on Threads specifically, since that's one of the places that many of you may have come from. They're also probably all on Instagram and probably many of them on TikTok, that are not necessarily all people that are not in favor of Harris or something like that, but people who are really doing, I think, a wonderful job of helping to educate, and specifically educating white people about the things I'm talking about here around some of the nuance and the context of this election that go beyond just, hey, a Black woman's running for president, we have to vote for her. It's sort of this like, let's understand that there is no perfect candidate, right? And it's okay to question that and to still say, I want to support this candidate because of the threat that exists with Project 2025. So if you're not following any of them, I highly recommend it. There's so many amazing Black women creating content. We're lucky to be able to receive from them. And then Catrice Jackson, I have the book over there, From Antagonists, Advocates, and Allies. This is not necessarily a direct quote from the book, but that's her book. And this, I think, is one of the most important things for us to think about, because everyone here, I have a feeling, identifies as a liberal or a progressive or a Democrat, or in some way feels like they are not part of the white woman problem. It is easy for us to make ourselves the exception, to make it about them, those white people. They're the problem. I have been very guilty of this. I still feel the pull inside myself to do that, to make myself exceptional, to make myself different from the Marjorie Taylor Greenes of the world. And listen, we are better than the Marjorie Taylor Greenes of the world. And we have to own that they are still ours. Right? We are the ones who are raised in that same water as Marjorie Taylor Greene, breathing the same air, having the same issues around the conditioning we receive that makes us feel this pull, perhaps not as big as hers, thankfully, but still we are fighting against the pull that wants to say, let's cling to that whiteness identity because we know it will save us, right? We know it will help us. And I love my Black sisters until push comes to shove, and then I'm going to still side with that white identity. And that is something that it is so deeply embedded. It is not our fault. We are all born into it and live it constantly, but that is why we have to do continuous work to confront that inside of us. Because you could, let's say theoretically you can't, but let's say theoretically today you were able to do all the work to remove all of your, racist biases that have been embedded in you. The second you walk out that door tomorrow, forget even walking out the door. The second you turn on the TV, the second you listen to a book or put on a podcast, the second you open your computer to do some work, you get onto Threads, no matter what, you are in it. It's in again. It's coming at you again, right? There is no escaping it. So we have to continuously do the work, always be learning, always be evolving, growing, calling out, all of that to make sure that this stuff doesn't stay with us. These are the resources I was mentioning. The Combahee River Collective statement is linked there, the Project 2025 stuff. And then there's a couple of articles that I thought were fairly interesting too that might be interesting to you, specifically the Divorcing White Supremacy Culture by Tima Okun. That one is where you can learn about all those pillars of white supremacy to watch for them in yourself. And I wanted to leave us with this thought, which is again from Catrice Jackson, and is again that great, you've been here. Great, you read the books. And this is me too. Great, I was here. Great, I read the books. Great, I'm following all these people. I cannot say that this is done. This work will never be done. And that is one of the hardest things for us as white women. We are conditioned to want to achieve, to reach the finish line, to conquer, to say we've done it. And so it is really, really hard as we go on this journey to confront the fact that we will never be done. We will never win. We will never conquer this. We will never be better than this. We will never finish until the day we all die, because we are not going to change these systems that are thousands of years old, certainly hundreds of years old in our lifetimes. We will, until the day we die, have to be continuously confronting these issues inside of ourselves if we truly want to be a part of the change. And, oh, I guess I'm not done. There's more. This, because now I want to get into the part about like, all right, that's all about us being white women. That's the white women problem, and hopefully the white women solution at some point. Let's talk about now, right? Because we're not going to change all that. Like we said, it's not going to happen today. And we still need to defeat Project 2025, right? Whether you look at it as, I want to get Harris elected because you're excited for her and that's great. Or if you're maybe more in my camp, which is I just want to defeat Project 2025 because I'm less excited about her, but more afraid of this. Wherever you're coming from, hopefully we have that shared goal of we can't see Trump elected again. And if that's the case, then I want everyone to think about what are your ways of being part of that change? Because another pillar of white supremacy is that there's one right way to do things. We see this on social media all the time. We see it a lot where people think there's only one way to truly be an activist. There's only one way to truly support Harris. I have certainly felt that recently as I have been more vocal about some of my issues with her. The truth is there are many ways to be a part of the change. I highly recommend checking out Deepa Iyer's social change map. Kudos to Taina Brown for sharing that with me. It's been so amazing for me. These are over here, you'll see in that graphic. These are all the different ways that you can be a part of the activism of making change around equity, liberation, justice, and solidarity. Not all of us are the disruptors. Not everyone is the one that's standing out there in like an activist getting arrested. We need those people and thank God for them, but not all of us are those people. Some of us, where I like to think of myself as more of the storyteller. I'm on social media and I'm talking about these things. I'm sharing ideas. I'm holding this event to try and share ideas and talk about these things. Some people are the caregivers. They're the ones that are in there just checking on the activists, tending to their needs, saying, how can I help you? How are you getting enough rest, right? We all have a piece of this. Some of us might find ourselves in several of the categories. It is important to activate in ways or in the way or in ways that are right for you, for your gifts, for your capacity, and in our case as white women, for our privilege. It's important for us to consider that piece. So you can vote. I will share, again, I can share these slides. If you don't know that you're registered to vote, there's a link to go make sure. Do that quick. You want to get that done before it's too late. And how far in advance of an election you have to do that varies by state. You also can find your polling place if you don't yet know where you're going to vote. You can educate. I link an article here on where Harris stands on different issues. And then Project 2025 again is linked. I think I already shared it. It says next page, but it was actually back farther. So you can share those things and educate others as you go and talk about Harris and you talk about Project 2025. You can volunteer at kamalaharris.com. You can go right there to volunteer locally, to knock on doors, make phone calls. There's a lot of ways to get involved. And then, of course, you can donate in alignment with your privilege to the Harris Victory Fund. But again, not everyone needs to donate. Find the ways that you're going to show up. So I put this in twice, didn't I? So here's these resources again. Okay. Y'all, I did this today. So because of course, I'm the queen of waiting to the last possible minute. I finished it about half an hour ago. So that's why some of it's a mess. And I just wanted to share a few quotes from some folks that I thought were really wonderful to just show this range of like, this is difficult. And our friends of color recognize that it's difficult as white people because we know that challenging these norms can cost us, right? It can cost us friendships. It can cost us our peace as we have people argue with us. There can be real cost to this. And the way that you show up to be a true ally and not just a self-appointed ally is to know that those costs are worth it and that you're going to be willing to have that cost because you need to. And not because it's going to earn you brownie points or get you invited to the cookout, but because it's the right thing to do. And that's why we have to do it. And I think that was it. Thank you very much. If you don't already follow me, you can on feministfounders.co. That's where I have my newsletter. I appreciate you all being here. Hi. Anyone who may have come in a little late. Let me know. Okay, good. I don't know. If there's any questions in there I didn't see, let me know. I'm going to share now the link to the donation fund. Here's the thing. I'm not even that worried about it. I mean, I would love for people to donate. Please do. My guess is a lot of you may have already donated. You've probably attended some of the other White Women for Harris things or the other Women for Harris. Like all of these things are out there. We're all getting inundated with requests to donate. So if you've already donated, you can't donate. Cool. I can't track how many people donated. I'm not that cool. I don't have the link to get a special link that tells me how many of you donate on my thing or whatever. Like if you haven't, then donate. I would love to do a little giveaway though of one of my fancy t-shirts that I've made. So here's the Harris 2024 t-shirt or any other Harris t-shirt that you can go and get from my shop. I would love to give one away. So I'm going to do that at the end of this or in a little while. I'm going to be hanging out for a while. I might go through that whole thing again later for the next round of people if anyone else shows up. I don't know how this is going to go tonight. But I'm happy to, I'll share the t-shirt shop in here too. And so you can take a look. I'm donating half of the profits. This is not a sales pitch. It's sounding like it, but it's not. I'm only sharing it so that you can see what there are so that, because I'm going to give one away to one of you. I'm trying to figure out how. First, I was thinking I would do it based on like, if you donate, you get entered into the thing. But frankly, at this point, I feel like donate. Don't donate. Do what's right for you. I don't want to pressure people to donate. Because I think there's lots of ways that we can support Kamala Harris and defeat Project 2025. But if you haven't donated, please do. And if you do donate, throw a little thing in there like, I donated. You don't have to tell us how much, but just say that you did, and then we'll know. But I'd love to open the floor to discussion, to talk about these issues, talk about what we've, been sharing here. And I'm going to look and make sure there's no chat. I see you on YouTube. It is working. So if you're watching on YouTube, hi, and feel free. Oh, thanks, Amy. Yay, we got a donation. And Kate donated once and is going to donate again later. Excellent, Kate. Thank you. And if you're watching on YouTube, feel free to share there. I can also see there and happy to like call anyone out and say thanks. But does anyone want to talk about any of what we just shared? Like, I don't really want to sit here for 2 hours talking to myself. So, but also know that if you do, like, raise your hand if you want to share anything. And if you do, just know that, like, if you're on camera, you'll be on YouTube nobody watch. I have 400 subscribers. It's not that big a deal, but I just want you to know in case you want to maintain privacy. Thank you, Tracy. She's going to donate later. Presley donated. Connie donated. Yay. Anyone raise your hand. Come talk to me about any of the stuff that we talked about in that presentation or what you're thinking. Don't make me sit here by myself. Lisa, come on.
I
Get
just
things
got
going.
here, so I
Oh,
missed your presentation. Sorry.
oh, that's okay, Tracy. I was going to go back through it again at some point, probably because I know I'm supposed to be here 2 hours. So I might go back through it like, and because I did say open house style. So some people are going to come in later. So but I would love to take a break from talking and hear what other people are thinking about with this upcoming election. If you have any thoughts about Project 2025, any fears, anything just specifically as a white person that's coming forward for you on how you want to show up or concerns you have, anything at all.
I will go.
Good. I knew I
I
could
know
count.
you're shocked.
Let me
Um,
remove my pin. There.
I live in Florida. For those of you who haven't met me before, I live in a particularly red county, so I am a bright spot of blue in a very, very red sea. And specifically, I live in a neighborhood filled with family that gleefully votes against all of our best interests. And so I have had to learn, the hard way that, sometimes when my passion drives the bus, it sounds like anger, and nobody responds well to anger. And exhaustion reads as apathy. And nobody responds well to somebody being apathetic, about your feelings. And so it is mind-boggling to me how steeped in the misinformation that pretty much everyone is in. I don't know if I said that right, but literally we'll start conversations and everybody's first, to your point, Becky, everybody's like, well, you're so political. And I said, listen, politics is a thread in which the fabric of our society is woven. So breathing is political for a lot of us.
For all of us.
So for all of us.
Because air quality, boom, I can make that. I mean,
Right.
literally everything's political.
Right. And, but they also, since Reaganomics, kind of wrecked a lot of stuff. And since Fox News is just a constant stream of misinformation, disinformation, flat out lies, they are convinced that all of the policies that are harming them are Democratic policies. And I can show them Republican policy, Republican policy, Republican policy. And they say, well, you're getting it from CNN. I'm like, honestly, CNN is too skewed your way. So I don't even watch CNN. I look at who votes what. I look at C-SPAN, I look at the actual bills that are passed, and they just won't believe me. And I am seeing even in these conservative communities that I circulate in, I'm seeing a difference. I'm furious at the way that Biden's dropout happened, because it did, take the voice of the people away and the will of the people away. However, with him dropping out and Kamala being the presumptive nominee, the energy is changing. I mean, when people in the villages are having golf cart rallies, the villages is notoriously super MAGA. And it's really has been fun to watch, especially since most of the people that argue with me are saying, oh, well, Biden's too old, he can't remember anything. And I'm like, well, I mean, first and foremost, he had a stutter, and they're like, oh, well, that doesn't matter. He's just too old. And I'm like, but so you're going to vote for the dude anyway. So you all know the arguments, you all know all of it, but watching the energy shift has been lovely, because I was afraid it was going to shift to, and it probably still will, but I thought it was immediately going to shift to anti-woman, anti-Black, anti-AAPI, anti all of the things.
Let's not forget all the DEI hire, DEI
Slept her
nominee
way to the
things.
top, all of it. But I don't know, man. This hope is, I'm thrilled at just the shift in energy.
Well, I
And
don't want to rain on anyone's parade.
yeah,
And let us not forget that right up until, I would say, even on election night, until the polls closed, I think most people thought Hillary Clinton was going to win.
sure.
So we have to, not to say that we shouldn't have, I like, hope is important, enthusiasm is important, and we have to be really careful to not allow that to make us check out, to say, this is done. She's got this, no problem.
Right. No, I'm saying it
Yeah.
to re-energize us into
Yeah.
continuing to the finish line, because we do see what can happen.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it, it's giving me hope, seeing the people that I thought immediately, were going to be just just hateful stuff coming out, seeing them pause and go, this could actually be a good thing. Or I didn't want to say it, but I hate DT that much. And it's that going, okay, we have a chance. It's not like, oh, we can give up now, she's going to win. No, because, as we saw with Hillary, the media is going to do Trump's job for him. The media is going to do Project 2025's job for them. And to your point, Becky, and we cannot sleep on the fact that they already have a plan to contest the election, because I think they already know they're going to lose it, both popular vote and electoral vote. So they
Yeah.
already have, what was it, Agent 47 or something like that. It's not.
They have their secret code names for everything.
Yeah, right. And
Yeah.
it's Project 2025 is already being enacted.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of us are only suddenly afraid of it because we're just now learning, because they finally put it in paper.
Well, I was gonna say, it's something for us to think about too, is that as much as so many of us are educated on these topics, only 1 in 4, as of the most recent stat I saw, only 1 in 4 Americans actually have heard of, let alone know what it is, Project 2025. So one of the things too that's really important for us is, like, those of us who have maybe more awareness of these issues, who have more of the, like, who are seeing the polls or these kinds of things, have to remember that the average Americans are not, and I don't mean average as like a slur in any way. I just mean most folks are not. We are
Median.
more the exception than the rule. And so
Right.
it really is incumbent on us to do that work of trying to educate, of sharing. And I'm really grateful for the point you brought up at the beginning, because this is as much a note for me as anyone else, that shaming, blaming, yelling, judging, none of those things work to move the needle. If, like me, it's difficult for you to have these conversations without that energy, then going back to Deepa Iyer's, the social change map, then storytelling may not be, even though I said I do storytelling, may not be the best modality for you, the best way for you to be a part of the change. So thinking about what is the way that you can be a part of the change. We can have those conversations with the people with the people with whom? With the people that we can have those conversations and not get activated. That's important. But once we move into that activation state, we're probably actually not helping. We're now hurting. And is that useful? Probably not, right? So for us to remember that, because I have been through it recently, of a lot of shaming, not from Republicans, but from people on the left, shaming me, and me realizing how much that actually pushes me farther away. Thankfully, I'm still very much committed, but I can see how someone would say, well, fuck it then. If you're going to be that way, I'm not going to support this at all. I'll just stay home. So we have to be really careful when we're talking to people, no matter where they're at, even if we think they agree with us, but maybe they're not in the same place as us, to watch out for how we're speaking about these things so that we are not turning voters off. And if we can't, that's also okay. Like, I think we all have to recognize where our strengths lie and then say, what is the way I show up?
Well, to add to that, I think it's also possible to be a chameleon of sorts. Start recognizing your audience and listen, I'm an excellent storyteller for people that are already kind of seeing my way or looking my way or think the way that I do, because they see the passion for what it is. But I'm clearly going to have to put on a more empathetic hat and a more, like common ground hat with people that already don't think about me. So it is a difficult skill to master, but it is possible to be a chameleon as needed, for the type of communication or the type of activism that that you want to have. And I've told my daughter from the jump, because she's like, why are people so like angry at me? Why are they so mad at me? And I said, they're not mad at you, they're afraid. And like nobody presents as fear if they can help it. Fear almost always manifests as anger. And so we have to remember that a lot of these angry reactions we're getting, they're based in fear of the unknown, and they've been told a lot of lies for a really long time, so they have no idea what to believe.
Yeah, Project 2025 is obviously all rooted in fear as well, right?
Of
This
course.
reactionary sort of fear. So yeah. Thank you for sharing, Lisa. I appreciate it because I knew I could count on you to get us started. Lisa never has
Thanks.
any problems with saying, I got something to say, and I appreciate it. Anyone else want to speak up or share or ask questions? If you've read anything that was really helpful for you. I also just want to make sure that you see, if you want me to send you that, the spreadsheet or the slideshow with all of the linked out resources, just drop your email. You can do it privately, a direct message or something. If you don't want everybody to see your email, that's fine. And I'm happy to send it to you. I am not keeping everyone's emails or anything from before. So if you want it, let me know. And if you're on YouTube and you want it, you can either put a message in YouTube, that might be hard, or send me an email. I'm Becky at beckymollenkamp.com. So raise your hand. Anybody else want to join the conversation? Ask any questions? Share anything?
Well, this is played shine for raised hands, but I guess it's not telling you anything.
Oh, it's okay. Hi, Tracy.
Hi. Well, so I'm in a blue state, but I happen to be in a red district, unfortunately, and I've not been able to change that. So when people say call your representatives, mega. It's interesting that I grew up in an apolitical family that we just didn't discuss politics. And for instance, one of my sisters wants to move to Florida, and my reaction was, Florida, who'd want to move there? And then the politics, and she's, oh, she doesn't care. And I'm like, oh my God, you're right. So, but it's not that I'm on a personal mission to change my mother, but what I've noticed is that she kind of represents people or reports to me on people that we kind of forget are out there. So she grew up, I guess I'll call her an Eisenhower Reagan Republican. So at this, it's kind of my mission at this point has been to explain to her what kinds of policies are being voted on, how Republicans vote for veterans, how they're voting on abortion. And I've told her about Project 2025, and she's kind of in a state of disbelief, like, oh my God, no, you can't, nobody would want to do that. But one of the things she threw up was like, oh, all my friends are saying, she called her Kamala, and I didn't even know who she meant. She said her friends are saying that Kamala is a communist, and they're very angrily proclaiming her to be a communist. And I try not to get defensive. I just said I can't think of a single one of her policies that's not like pro capitalism or even pro socialism, but communism. Like, please give me some examples. I don't know. So again, it's not my mission to change her so much as kind of get her to understand, and in turn, hopefully pass the message to her friends who are talking about these things, that it's no longer their party. I think she's starting to get that because she grew up Republican, and she still has a few holdovers, but she's slowly coming to terms with the fact that a lot of the policies that are being enacted are ones that she personally hates. And so right now she's kind of in limbo. And I was telling her just before I came on this call about our concern brought up by Mark Elias about the red state electoral boards refusing to certify that possibility. And I don't know what our options are for that sort of thing. If if the electoral boards refuse to certify, if Harris wins and they refuse to certify, so that enough of them, so that ultimately the entire election goes to the House. I don't know if you're familiar with that concern. If you're, yeah. So
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
something that I don't know what our options are against that other than let's vote like we've never voted.
that
That might
is
not
the
work.
first and foremost, I believe, is the like make this such a clear and decisive victory that it becomes much more difficult for just publicity's sake, right? For them to be able to publicly do something so misaligned with the election results. Beyond that, like we have to have some faith in what democracy we have now. And so, yeah. But I mean, I think the only thing that's within our control at the moment is trying to mobilize and activate voters. And to speak to what Gabrielle, sorry if I'm saying it wrong, was talking about too. And thank you so much, Tracy, for sharing, because I feel that. And I was just gonna say to you before I go to Gabrielle's question, or Gabrielle's question, is one thing that can sometimes be helpful, not always, but sometimes be helpful with some of those old guard Republicans who are slowly starting to come to some sense that this is not their party, and that even more so that they are not sure if they can fully support this party anymore, is there are so many former Republicans that are speaking out. I mean, obviously the Lincoln Project, there's others that have podcasts and things. I don't know I mean, if your mom's an Eisenhower Republican, she might be a little older and not a podcast listener, but if you can find some of those resources for her from some of those former Republicans that names she might recognize, and tell it from their words, sometimes that can help because it's coming from somebody that they felt aligned with them. Whereas sometimes, because again, this white supremacy culture, we are very much brought into being defensive, to protecting ourselves, to being correct. And so when it feels like it's this opposite party talking to me, we can get defensive. When it feels like it's somebody who actually is like me, knows me, we may be more open to receiving the exact same information. So when you can get it from a resource or a source that's speaking the language she knows, right? The Republican language, that can help. Um, so thank you. And I wanted to talk about Gabrielle. I don't know. I'm so bad at that name. I don't know if it's Gabrielle or Gabriel. I don't know. I think Gabriel's boy is the male version and Gabrielle. Anyway, you were asking about who to reach out to. Like, how do you prioritize who to reach out to as white women? Should it be the white women who voted Republican, white women who are disengaged, leftists who are for Gaza, kind of have the line in the sand? I mean, I love Presley's answer, which is like talking to people who agree with you most. I can tell you, looking at all of the numbers, so those white women numbers are far more divided than just this generic 45% or whatever. When you look at it, the people who are most likely to vote Republican and probably going to be the most difficult for you to bother breaking through, the more evangelical number one. Above all the other factors, evangelical is the top one that will say someone's going to vote Republican. So your evangelical friends, it's going to be much harder to try and break through. Then would become either rural or less educated. Both of those were pretty close. So your rural friends and friends who have less education are going to be sort of the next most difficult to break through. And often all of these kind of align. So the more of the things I'm talking about now that they have, the harder time you will ever have. So the most likely people are going to be, if you happen to know any urban educated white women who might still be leaning towards, like, who are not certain about Kamala, those are the most important people to talk to. The urban white women are the most likely to vote Democrat, and the more educated they are, the more likely are to vote Democrat. So if you know any of those women that you're not sure, if they're not 100%, you can't be certain that they're not like fibbing to the people and saying, oh, I'm totally going to vote for Kamala, and then are going to go in there and vote differently. Those people. Next is suburban women. Suburban women are by far the biggest swing part of the white woman demographic. Women like myself, which is why I feel this obligation to do this, because I am that white woman, suburban, well-educated mom who I'm in a red state, Tracy, but in a blue district. So the opposite of you. I have never voted for a Republican in my life. So I'm not the typical person they're talking about, but that person is like the primo person for you to probably try to reach out to. Your suburban mom friends that have probably got a college degree. Those are the ones that, from what I can tell, I think seem to be the people who know better. Like, they know how they will be received if they say they wouldn't vote for Harris, but they're the ones when they get into that booth, something kind of switches and they're like, well, my husband did this, or, but I kind of don't like the school thing or the whatever. And they're likely to switch. And so the more that you can really get through to them about why to not make that change when they get in the booth is really important. The people on the far left, the people on the far right are going to be harder. I think you'll have more luck with the Gaza folks than the deeply, deeply red folks. But yeah, I would say look at suburban moms. Any of your suburban mom people in your life, that's the most likely. Maybe if anybody else wants to say anything, feel free to unmute yourself or to raise your hand. I'm just looking to see what any of this other info said. And yes, Gabrielle, oh, I'm so bad at that. I'm so sorry. I don't know why I'm having such an issue with Gabrielle. I agree with you. Like, and I don't know if you got to see the slideshow I did, Gabrielle, but that's like, we need to embrace that both and we have to, if we want to reach people, we can't reach people by shaming and getting into this place of there's only one right way to do this. There's only one right way to support Harris, because you can vote for Harris and have problems with some of her policies. I'm one of those people. And when we have people on the far left telling me that means I'm a failure at being a socialist, or I'm a failure at being progressive, so be it. But I also have people on the other side of that are more moderate who are telling me I'm failing, I'm basically no better than Trump. None of those things help me. It's not helping anything. So it's not bringing me to anyone else's side. Oh, thanks, people who came to hang out with me. I do think, unless anyone has any other questions or anything, though, I'm probably going to call it early because I'm going to go put my kiddo to bed and get a little snuggle time with him. And obviously, the number of interruptions from him, he's wanting his mom.